Now that the bow's all finished, we're going to start working on the arrows. So here I have 6 Douglas Fir shafts. These are spine and matched weight to within a pound of each other. You know, I like the fact that these are really tight tolerances in terms of physical weight and spine weight. I picked these up from Raptor Archery. If you want to get wood shafting, I personally think you should try and find someplace local to you that actually cuts and makes their own shafting. If you don't have anybody local, you can check out Ted's site at Raptor Archery. He has some amazing stuff, and if you have questions about what species of wood is best, if he has any recommendations, it's really nice that he can give you advice and help you out. He's been doing archery for quite a while, so he's got a lot of experience under his belt. So these shafts, I personally like these because I personally shoot a lot of hardwood shafts. I do that because hardwood shafts are very heavy. They're also very tough. You can shoot them at rocks, shoot them at stumps, shoot them at metal poles, and they hold up a lot better than Port Orford cedar, which is pretty much the standard for wood arrows. Now, I like Douglas Fir because it's almost like a hardwood. It's got the hardwood weight and durability to a degree. These are heavy shafts, and we're going to be building some heavy arrows. But these are heavy shafts, durable shafts. One of the nice things is that hardwood shafts tend to require a lot of maintenance. They usually need to be heat straightened. They don't do very well, even if you seal them well. They don't do very well with humidity and just things like that. Softwoods tend to be a little more stable. Once you straighten them, they only really need to be hand straightened, and even then sometimes they don't even need hand straightening. So that's a nice thing. So I'm going to be using these, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our self nocks. Now, normally I would finish an arrow first and then apply my nocks as one of the last steps, but I'm going to be doing something special with these, and I want to finish these nocks while I'm finishing the rest of the shaft. So today we're going to be doing a reinforced self knock. You can see these are both reinforced self nocks. They have a strip of some other material in there that helps keep them together, helps keep the string from breaking the arrow. So this one here is a strip of PVC. Kind of looks like bone, but that's actually PVC pipe in there. And this is some wenge. It's a nice dark wood. It's a really cool wood. You can't really see the pattern. It has a pattern very similar to pheasant wood, kind of a feathery look to it. And the tool I'm using for this, I also got from Ted at Raptor Archery. This is something that he designed. He calls it the Nifty Knocker. It's basically an aluminum chuck that allows you to cut the slot for your reinforcement and for your string knot. So the way it works is you take your shaft, you put it in there, and you want to line it up so that the reinforcement goes in. Let me kind of tighten this up a little bit. So that the reinforcement goes in parallel to the grain. You can see that. So that your actual nocks go perpendicular to the grain. Once you've got this set in here, all you need is a saw, and you can cut down to make your reinforcement, and then you can turn it and cut for your nock. So this is what I'm going to be using today to show you guys. Now, Ted makes and sells these. It's a really nice product. There are others on the market, though his is kind of nice where it's really user friendly. Most of the other ones actually come with separate pieces, and his older design that he sold did come with separate collets for different size shafts. This one will go all the way from 5/16 to just under 3/8. I can get 3/8 dowels to work in this thing, so it's kind of nice and versatile. I've gone ahead and put the nifty knocker in a vise, that way it won't move. It's nice and stable so I can cut this. And I'm using a tile saw. This will give you the right sized hole or the right sized slot for one of these. These are the reinforcing strips for this. You can make these, you can even make your own out of 1/2 inch PVC pipe. But Ted also sells these pre-cut. He offers different species of wood. So these are the wenge. I feel that it gives a nice contrast and it's a really nice effect. So you just want to start cutting, and you want to cut down to the base. So and you just want to kind of go light and let the tool do the work. If you really go at it, you can cut this. This is not cut proof. So you just kind of want to let the saw do its thing, and it will go in without cutting the aluminum. So alright, so now you loosen that up. There we go. You can see it's got a nice cut there. So you take one of your reinforcing pieces and it goes right in. So now we're just going to glue that into place. So before I glue anything, I like to take a little piece of sandpaper and just clean this out. Just really quickly. You don't want to change the shape of this or deform it, but you do want to kind of clean it up so that your glue lines are nice and clean. So there we go. Another thing you want to do is, if you notice, because we used a round saw, the bottom is rounded. You have two options. You can either square that up, or you can round this off because this edge is rounded. I like to round these off, and it's really simple. You just take your piece of sandpaper, hold your little strip of wood here, and just go back and forth a few times. It doesn't take much because of the way the grain is oriented. You can see the grain is oriented this way, so you're basically just peeling off these layers. It comes off really, really easily. Okay, so now when you put it in there, that's if you don't drop it. If you put it in there, it's a nice clean match. So now I'm going to glue this in. I'm going to use a little bit of epoxy. So I'm going to go ahead and mix my epoxy real quick. Alright, now that you've mixed up your epoxy, you just want to go ahead and apply it onto the piece of wood here. Now one thing you can do is, you don't have to use epoxy. You can use wood glue, hot melt, really just about anything will work. I tend to use hot melt or plastic compatible epoxy or PVC compatible epoxy when using PVC inserts as regular regular wood epoxy doesn't tend to work that well. Okay, so you've gone ahead and applied it. You just take it and you insert it. Just press it in. Make sure it sits nice at the bottom. And then I like to take a little bit and just apply some on the edges. Especially if there are any gaps, you want to fill them up. So there it is. Now you just need to wait for it to cure. Once it's cured, we can cut our nock and then we can clean this all off. So I'm going to let this cure and I'll show you what that looks like. I've gone ahead and let this dry. So now it's cured and ready to be worked. Now you have a couple of options. The first thing you can do is just slide this back into the slot, and you can see that the reinforcement piece actually slots it and lines it up for you. So now you're ready to make your nock cut. Now if you put too much glue and it doesn't fit, you're going to have to smooth that off first. So what I'm going to do anyway is just file this off and sand it down smooth, and then we'll work on cutting our nocks. Alright, I went ahead and ground this down. You can see it's got a nice clean transition, and any gaps have been filled in by the epoxy, but still it's a pretty solid glue line. So I'm going to go ahead, put this in here, and then you want to make sure that the reinforcement lines up in the same place it was before. Because now, instead of cutting with the grain, you want to cut perpendicular to the grain. That's going to make sure that your nock is very strong and won't split. Because now you're covered in both directions. This reinforcement nock will keep the wood from splitting this way, and cutting with the grain aligned this way will actually help prevent the nock from splitting the other way. So it'll hold everything together. So now I just take my file, line it up, or my tile saw, line it up, and just start cutting. Now I like to keep my nocks fairly shallow. You really only need about 1/4 of an inch or so on your nock depth. It doesn't need to be super deep. If you were to cut your nock all the way down to the base of this, you would have two very long protrusions that would be weak, and you run the risk of them breaking fairly easily. So some of my first ones were done all the way down to the bottom when I was reinforcing nocks, but I learned pretty quickly that that doesn't work very well. So you just cut down to about 1/4 of an inch. Maybe a little deeper. Make sure it's straight across. And you can take it out. And there it is. There's our nock. Now that you've cut your nock, what I like to do is take my tile saw and just gently cut at an angle. What you're trying to do is you're trying to reduce the sharp edges. You want the interior of your nock to be rounded. If you can see right in there, what I've done is I've rounded this off. And then This will also help keep the nock from getting pinched. Alright, now you just go and make sure both sides are fairly even. That looks good. So I'm going to move on to a file. Now I'm going to go at an angle and file the inside edge of the knock. You can see one side has been smooth, the other side hasn't. The sharp edge can actually help prevent an easy knocking. So when you have this nice and smooth, it'll be easier to get it on the string. It will also help keep this from fraying your string. So you just want to round off that inside edge. Once I've done that, I like to go with the file and just sort of add a bevel to the whole top of the knock. Now that that's done, I take a piece of sandpaper and I just smooth out the inside of the knock. Smooth out the inside edges so that it doesn't cut my string or my fingers. You want pretty much everything on your knock to be rounded, at least where string and finger contact are concerned. You just go ahead, sand it off, and then I like to take my sandpaper and sand the whole knock. And I'm using a very fine sandpaper right now. There it is. The knock is finished. So now I'm just going to sand the whole arrow shaft in preparation for finishing.